This is a demonstration of how the Sync API works. So we're gonna basically do these 3 steps. The first step is that we're gonna sign up for a Sync account and get an API key. The second step that we're gonna follow is to create an HTML file, and we're gonna use the Sync widget in order to synchronize a site, in this case a bank. And in the last step, we're gonna use Postman just to query some transactions of the site that we synchronized on the previous step. So this is the steps that we're gonna follow just to do the sync demonstration and show how the sync service works, and hope this video can be useful for you guys. Let's start with the first step. We're gonna sign up for a Sync account and get our API key. So we're gonna head to the Paybook site. And here we're gonna go to the footer. Basically, Paybook is the one in the company that created the Sync API service, so we can see here the products, and we're gonna click on Sync API. Basically, this is the site of Sync where they explain what the Sync service does and give, for example, the supported site, the security standards that they follow, and so forth. So we're gonna get our API key. So basically we need to sign up first for a Sync account. So I am gonna introduce my email here and click on sign up. So an email has been sent to my email just to confirm. So here I can see the confirmation email. So I am gonna verify it. Let me close this other tab. And here what I need to do is to finish the sign up process. So I am gonna introduce my name, my username, which is gonna be this one, and I'm gonna introduce some password. I'm gonna agree to the terms and conditions and click on next. And then Sync is asking me if I wanted to access my location just to configure my final settings. So I can see here the language is fine, the currency is gonna be Mexican currency, Mexican peso, and the country is gonna be Mexico. That's fine. And here I am. This is like the first screen that you access when you log in to your Sync account. Basically, it's your list of profiles. In this case, since this is a new account, I just have one profile, which is the one that Sync created for me, and this is the one that we're gonna be using for this demonstration. So I am gonna click on that profile, and since this is the first time that I use the Sync service, it's gonna be asking me to fill in this form, which is basically a contract that you need to sign in order to use the Sync service. So I'm gonna fill in this form, introduce the city, the zip code, my phone number, and to create some fintech applications and software. I'm gonna agree to it. If you wanna see the Sync service agreement, you can see it here. In this case, it's fine for me, so I am gonna register. So once you register, once you sign the contract, basically what you're gonna see is the Sync dashboard. It is important to mention that that contract just need to be signed at once. So the first time you log into your Sync account and click on a profile, this is the screen that you're gonna see, which is basically like the Sync dashboard where you can see the main information. So for example, here you can see all the sites that they have, the status of them. So you can see that almost all of them are working properly. And here is the more important information, which are your API keys. Sync provides you with two API keys, one for the sandbox environment, just for testing purposes, and the production one. And here also you have the links to the forums and the resources that they give you in order to implement the service. We're gonna using these ones in the following videos. Now we already have our Sync account and we already have access to our API key, which is the one that we see on the dashboard. Basically, we can see the value of it. By default, it is obfuscated by the dashboard. So we can say that we already complete the first step. So the second step is that we're gonna create an HTML file and we're gonna use the sync widget in order to synchronize the site. So to do this, I'm gonna, in the dashboard, I'm gonna hit on this button, which is the GitHub repositories that Sync give us. And here we can find different resources that they provide to us in order to implement the service. So the one that I'm gonna be using is the Sync widget. So basically the Sync widget is a widget that you can use on your front-end application in order to synchronize institutions. We can see here like the widget itself. Basically this is by far the easiest way for you to implement the service. This is why I am choosing this resource. And it's a lot of documentation for it, so I am gonna base on this resource to implement the service. So what I'm gonna do first is to create an HTML file, and I'm gonna call it index.html, and I'm gonna save it. And what I'm gonna do is just to copy the example that they gave us in the GitHub repository and just paste it. So this is just plain HTML. There is nothing more. And just to, I'm gonna edit it a little bit and put it here, Sync widget demonstration. And in the body, I'm gonna put, this is my Sync widget demonstration site. So I'm gonna, this is like the code snippet that you need in order to use the Sync widget. Basically, I am gonna update this in order to set up the widget in English. That's it. So I'm gonna click on save, and then what I'm gonna do is to open this file in the browser. So basically, this is the file that I just saved on my desktop. I'm gonna click on it, and I am gonna open it with Google Chrome. So here I am. So as you can see, this is the Sync widget demonstration site. I am using the file protocol, and this is the text that I just put in here. So as you can see, if I refresh, the Sync widget, it's opened by default. In this case, it's not working and it's showing me this error, but this is because I am not using the correct value here. So this is gonna be a token that we're gonna create by using our API key. But basically, we already have the main setup in order to use the widget. So just to try it again, I am gonna click here on refresh, and you can see here that the widget is properly working. So let's solve this error. So here we are. We already have our sync widget implemented, but we are having this error. So in order to solve this, basically we need to create a token. For this, we're gonna be using the API key that we already have on the dashboard. But first of all, it's important for me to explain a little bit how to use this API key. So for this, I am gonna click on the documentation, and then I'm gonna go to the docs tab. So basically here is the bullet for the API key, and basically the first step in order for you to use the API key or one of the first actions is to create a user. And basically once that you have a user, you can create a token. Why is this important? Well, basically, let's see this diagram. An API key can have different users. Basically, a user is simply, you can see a user as a customer. So let's say that I am a developer, that I have this API key, but I am creating an application which has different customers, and each customer has its own credentials, its own transactions, its own attachments, and so forth. So in order for me to get access to those specific information, I create a user, and then all the information that I create for that user, it's gonna be easily accessible through the user identifier. So in this case, and this is also important for security purposes, because once you have a user, you can create a token. Basically, a token, it's like an API key, but that it's gonna only be useful for that user. So let's say with my main API key, I can access all the information that is on the Sync API. And let's say that and this is not the best practice, because if someone has that API key, can access basically all my Sync API information. So instead of using the API key, we recommend our users to create a token. A token is basically a mix of the API key and your user, and it's gonna give you a token, which basically has the same functionality as the API key, but it's only useful for the user that you created that token. So if I create a token for Walmart, then it means that with that token I can only access the Walmart transactions, the Walmart credentials, the Walmart attachments, and so forth. So so the first step that you need in order to use the Sync API is, in this case, to create a user. And once you created that user, you can create a token. And once we have that token, as you can, if you can remember, that token is the one that we're gonna be using in order to use the Sync widget. So in the Sync widget, we are not using the API key, we are using the Sync token. So this is what we're gonna do in the following videos, to create a user in order to create a token in order to use the Sync widget. Okay, so let's start and create our user. So for this, we're gonna go to the Sync dashboard and in this case, copy the value of our API key. So I am gonna be using Postman in order to consume the Sync API. So I am gonna create a new collection, which is gonna be called Sync API. I am gonna create in this case a new request. So in this case, first I am gonna create a request to get my users. Get sync users, and I'm gonna save it. So I am gonna go to the sync documentation, and basically I am going to go to the sync query. Basically the endpoint that we're gonna be using is this one in order to retrieve the users. So I'm gonna copy the value and going here, and it's important for me to use the API key value in order to get the users. For example, if I click here on send, it's gonna retrieve me an unauthorized response because I haven't provided any information for authorization. So in order to authenticate with the Sync API, you can use the authorization header, then put here API key, and then introduce your API key value. And basically I'm gonna copy the value and put here API key equals and the value. I saved and then I click send. So as you can see, since this is a new API key, it retrieves me a code 200, which is basically a success, but I don't have any users, so I see here an empty array. So then what we're gonna do is to duplicate this request, but now we're gonna be using post. The URL is the same. We're gonna be using the same header, but now we need to provide a JSON body, which is the information for our new user. So in this case, there is only one required value, which is the name. So let's create a demo user. So I'm gonna click here and save, and let's change the name for this request. Create a sync user, save, and then click on send. So basically here I see the response, and basically is the sync user that I just created. This is the identifier for the user, the name, and basically some other information. So if I now go back and get the sync user list again, I can see that now I have one user. So the next step that we're gonna follow, as you see, if you remember, we need to use this user in order to create a token. So I am gonna duplicate this call again, and then we're gonna call it create a sync token. And for this, we're gonna be using a different endpoint, which is basically almost the same URL, but we need to put here, instead of users, sessions. We're gonna hit on save, and for the headers, it's gonna be the same, but for the body, we need to specify the identifier for that user. So I am gonna put here the identifier. So since you remember, the token was a mix of your API key and your and a user. So here I am sending the API key, and in the body I am sending the user that I want to use in order to create that token. So then the token that I obtain, it's only gonna be useful for this specific user. So let me click on save and then click on send, and then here I have the response. As you can see, as part of the response I can have the token. So basically if I copy this value and then go to the website, I can replace the sync token value for the real one, then click on save. Then I'm gonna get back to my sync widget demonstration site. I can close it. I am gonna be refreshing, and as you can see now the error is gone. This is because I am now using a proper token in order to instantiate the widget itself. So let's use the widget in the following videos, but we already have the widget properly implemented. So before using the sync widget and actually create a credential before synchronizing a site, I am gonna get back to the Postman and I am gonna be using another endpoint. So let me duplicate the first one, and I just want to show you that at this moment there are no transactions linked in this case to this user, but also to my API key. So let's create another request, which is gonna be to get the transactions. Basically it's gonna be almost the same, but I am just need to change user for transactions. Then I'm gonna click here on save and then click on send. So okay, there is an invalid user headers. Okay, it means that in order to use this endpoint I will need to use a token, so I am gonna be using this token and authorization token, let's do it that way, and you can see. So the transactions endpoint for security purposes is only accessible through the token and not the API key. So in this case I need to change the way I authenticate to the API. So instead of using the API key authorization header, now I'm using the token header and I am using the token that we just created before. So I use the same token, I click on save, and then I send the request, and you can see that there are no transactions. So now we're gonna go to the sync widget. I'm gonna refresh, and then I am gonna add a transaction, a credential, sorry. So in this case I am gonna be using BBVA. So I am gonna click on it and I am gonna use this particular site of personal bank accounts. So I click on BBVA, then I need to introduce my credentials. So in this case it's asking me for the card number. So let's introduce it. So there it is, and then my password, which is this one, I think. So I'm gonna click on next, and this is a very cool thing of the widget because you can close it and it's still there. So your users can still, your customers can still be using your application while synchronizing a credential. So for this case, as you can see, this particular site requires a two-factor authentication, which basically is a token. So when the sync service detects that we need to introduce a token, the API automatically asks the widget for that token. So the widget asks the end user for the token value. So let me introduce the value of it. I am just getting my token. Give me some seconds. Okay, let me create a token, and here it is. So let me introduce 58215204. Next. So it is authenticating the token, and let's give it a couple of seconds. The login was successful, which means that Sync service has properly accessed my account, and then here we can see the successful result, which means the connection has been successfully and data has been extracted. And by data they mean that already the sync service already pulled some transactions from my VVVA account. So then we can close the widget, and then what I am going to be doing is using this same endpoint in order to retrieve the transactions. So let's click on send, and here now I can see my VVVA transactions that has been obtained by using the widget and the Sync API itself. So here I can see all the transactions in a standardized way, and here I can see the description, the date, the type of account, and so forth. So we have seen so far how to synchronize a bank institution, in this case BBVA. And now before finish, I would like to make a quick demonstration of how to synchronize a SAT credential. And basically the SAT is the Internal Revenue Service from Mexico. So in this case, instead of synchronizing transactions like bank transactions, we're gonna be getting invoices that the SAT stores in this case. So the process is gonna be almost very similar to the case of BBVA that we have done. And let's go and do it. So I am gonna create a new token because the one that we already used has been expired, and I am just gonna update the sync widget in order to use this new token. I'm gonna hit save, and then I'm gonna refresh the widget. So before going into the synchronization of the SAT, which is this institution inside the government tab, I would like to show you the credentials that we have created on Sync. So for this, I'm gonna duplicate this endpoint, and then we are gonna call this, I'm gonna rename it, and it's gonna be get sync credentials. So basically every institution we synchronize is stored as a credential in the Sync API, basically because as we are providing the username and the password and that information, that data is stored in Sync as a credential object. So if we try to get the credentials linked to a specific user, then I'm gonna be able to get it. So in this case, I am retrieving the credentials for the user that we created. So in this case, there is only one credential, which is the BBVA credential that we synchronized minutes ago. So now that I am gonna synchronize the SAT, when we finish that process, if we go back here, we will see two credentials. One is gonna be the one from BBVA, which is this one, and then will be another one, which will be the SAT account credential. So let's try and add the SAT credential. In this case, the site I am gonna be using is the CIEC, which is the one that we need to use in order to get the invoices. So I am introducing here my RFC, which is my taxpayer identifier, 69, and then I'm gonna introduce my password. So for this case, it's gonna be this, and the same process is gonna run. In this case, the SAT doesn't require two-factor authentication. So as long as your credentials are fine, the synchronization process, it's gonna run without any interruption, and let's wait for the results. So here it is validating the credentials. So let's give it a couple of seconds for it to finish. And there it is. So the SAT has been synchronized successfully, and now we can close the widget. So if I go back to the postman, I can now get my credentials, and as I just mentioned, now we have the VVA credential, but also we have a new credential, which is the one of the SAT site. And of course, in this case, if I go to the sync transactions, now I can filter by ID credential. So in this case, if I go here and click on the params, I can put here the ID credential, and I just want to retrieve in this case, the invoices. So I need to use this second credential, and I am gonna put here the value. I wanna hit save, and let's wait for the response, and here they are. So basically, these are invoices that come from the Internal Revenue Service, the SAT of Mexico. So as you can see, there are transactions from BBVA here, but these are invoices that BBVA issues to me. But there are also other transactions from Banco Santander, from BBVA, from Greenpeace, and so these are not bank transactions. These ones are actually invoices. Actually, here I can see the name of the file, the XML file, which is the format in which the SAT stores the invoices, and actually we can get the original XML file. So for this, let's try to do it. I'm gonna duplicate this endpoint as well, and I am gonna rename it, and let's call it get XML file. So for this, I am gonna use a different URL, which is gonna be the attachments, and here I can specify the attachment ID. So if I go to the transactions, you can see that in particular this transaction has attachments, which is basically the XML file. So I can take the ID attachment and place it here, hit save, and then let's see if we can retrieve that file. So as you can see, here is the XML file as it is stored in the the SAT. Basically, we obtain this file by using the Sync API. So basically, for each transaction, as long as it has attachments related to it, we can, of course, get those same attachments using the same API, in this case, the Sync API. So this is the demonstration of how to sync a SAT account, a SAT credential. Basically, this is the power of the Sync API service. You have seen how to synchronize a bank institution, in this case as well, the SAT institution. So you can see how the API is really easy to implement, but of course it's really powerful because we can have access to a lot of data that we can use in order to create our fintech applications or improve the software that we're building. So that's it. Hope you guys have enjoyed this video, and hope you can subscribe to Sync and create your account, get your API keys, and start using the service. Thank you.